Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time since we finished Saipan Sherman, but I've decided that I need to rebuild my workspace, so I've got new desk, new lights, and also I needed to, generally to sort my stuff like paints, brushes, tools, basically all the stuff and materials that I'm using during my builds and dioramas. So now it's finished and we can focus more on the upcoming projects. And first one will be this Jagdpanther from Meng. This will be very, let's say, strange build because you will see in a moment, but for now let's focus on reference photos. So here you can see assembly line of the Jagdpanthers, which was bombed by Allied forces, and there are plenty of photos showing the destroyed assembly line on which there are some Jagdpanthers in various stages of finish. Here, for example, you can see Jagdpanthers without wheels. The wheels are stacked on the left side. Thinking about Jagdpanther, you need to remember that it was built on the Panther G chassis, so it shares the same characteristics with the normal Panther tank. For me, most recognizable part is the rear plate, on which you can see different types of exhaust pipes, starting from the very early type, which was similar to the Panther A, so 3 pipes on the left side and 1 on the right. You have to remember that only the center pipe on the left was exhaust. The other 2 pipes were connected to the engine cooling system, so they don't get that much heat and thus they don't get that rusty cover. Next there are Flammenvernister types, so the thick tubes on the back, and they supposed to hide flames going off the exhaust while the engine was running. And the last were, simply 2 exhaust pipe covered with metal sheet to protect them and to hide the red glowing while the metal was hot. Gun barrel is another characteristic feature of the Jagdpanther. At first Germans mounted a one-piece barrel, but then they quickly realized that it was very hard to replace and service them, so they've changed it to the 2-piece barrel, so the outer barrel can be quickly removed and changed. And this also goes with gun mantlets, so actually there were 4 types of gun mantlets. Very first was welded to the front plate and other 3 types were screwed. And again, this will help with removing the whole gun along with the bridge from the inside of the Jagdpanther. Now the promised fun part. As you can see, I already have one Jagdpanther which was unfortunately damaged, and I've decided to use it in this diorama. So I've measured the roof and side and front plate and replaced them. The side on which the Jagdpanther was cut will be the edge of the diorama, so I covered it with the wooden plate. And here you can see the damage. Also here you can see that the back plate is basically bent to the inside, and here is the reason. This Jagdpanther was placed under the windshield in my car and I was driving like that for more than a year. Once I even took out myself from getting a ticket because the policeman was playing World of Tanks, and we have a nice chat, and at the end he said that I was driving too fast, but I don't get the ticket because we have such a nice chat about the tanks. So the Jagdpanther was exposed to the high heat from the sun, and practically the roof plate, the gun and the hatches, all the upper hull melted to the inside, and basically it was a trash. The plan is to place the new Jagdpanther between those halves of the destroyed one, and this will create the illusion of the assembly line. 3 Jagdpanthers made out of 2. So imagine that this Ferdinand is Jagdpanther, so here and here I'm gonna stack some wheels and spare parts, just like on those photos you saw before. and the roof and the damaged part of the Jagdpanther halves will be covered with bricks and, you know, destroyed factory parts. Now for the new Jagdpanther, as you can see, this is Ausführung G1, so early type with vision port for the driver and one-piece barrel. Here you can see the pieces I use for measuring replacements on the damaged one. This kit consists most parts to build mid, late and early Jagdpanther. Unfortunately the front plate is only for the early one with those vision ports for the driver. So the thing I like in those Mank kits is that the armor plates were placed on some sort of cage, and each armor plate is melted separately, so you know you have the interlocking of the armor plates like on the real one. Oh, here you can see that cage. Another great detail of Mank's Panther and Jagdpanther, those radiators you can glue from the inside to the engine deck cover, so there won't be, you know, gap when you look through the grills. And the worst part, tracks. Fortunately those won't be needed in my build, but those guiding horns each separately are pure nightmare for me. Some polycaps, some towing cables, clear parts and photo edge, basically all you need to build decent Jagdpanther. So, the build. As always, in case of German Panzers, you have quite significant number of wheels to assemble, and then you can go to the bottom half of the tank, which is not the bathtub style hull. And again, this is clever engineering from Mank. As I mentioned before, those interlocking plates from the upper hull and those plates for the lower hull, you know, I like this way much more than having two gigantic parts for the lower and upper hull, because sometimes they came wrapped and it is very hard to glue, especially in German Panzers when you have this, you know, interlocking of the lower and upper front plate. You have that very narrow and sharp edge there, and you know, sometimes it's tricky to have it assembled in a crisp way. And another thing you get here, locking for the, you know, guiding for the suspension. So it is very easy to make suspension movable, but if you want rock solid construction, you can glue every suspension arm in the place, and it will be very easy to have the suspension aligned vertically and horizontally. And this is also true for idler wheel, because the idler wheel suspension goes you know, for the front and the back, so vertically, not vertically, horizontally. And when it's glued in wrong position, you can have the situation when you know, you will be missing, for example, when installing the tracks, you will be missing like half of the track to, you know, to wrap the track around the wheels. That's because the idler wheel will be, you know, little bit back or little bit forward. So lower hull assembled, you can see the T-shaped part on the inside and those plates which help you glue this thing together, and eventually this will be very solid construction, as I mentioned before. I like this way more than, you know, one piece bathtub style hull. Oh, so here you can see this little guiding pin inside the idler wheel suspension. I like this idea very, because sometimes in past I've building, you know, Dragon. I believe the Dragon Panthers don't have it, and the idler wheel is, you know, swinging forward and back, and sometimes even if properly glued, when you use some force, especially when you use fuel tracks, for example, you can move this idler wheel back and forward, and it will be, you know, it will be ruining your work. Next step is about gluing all those armor plates and fenders together, and also a engine deck. so it's important to remember to glue those two radiators before you glue and close up everything. uh, I've painted those radiators simple red primer and some basic weathering, just to achieve the convenient look of something that will be inside of the engine compartment. Here on the side plates, front plate and upper back plate, you can see clearly the interlocking, which is cool and looks very convenient, just like in real tank. And one more thing worth to mention is about drilling holes. At some steps, instruction told us to drill some holes, additional holes in the engine deck, in the back plate, and you have to be very careful if you want to drill those holes, because let's say for example this back plate, it already has some holes for guiding pins on the additional baskets, but I won't be using them just like on photos before, and those holes need to be covered, and I don't need additional holes. There will be it is pointless to drill them, so you have to, at some point, the basic knowledge about tank is necessity here. Okay, now this radiator. I thought maybe I will cut off this one side of the engine cover plate and leave the radiator open, but then I decided it will be it won't look good, so it stays like this. Now the engine deck is on and the frame, and I've decided to paint the interior red primer because I want to leave maximum amount of holes in the in the Jagdpanther, so all the hatches, all the additional plates will be removed, and even I don't know about the gun barrel and the gun mountlet. Okay, front plate and side plate and little back plate are on, and you can see that the red primer inside, it just gives the very factory look to this build. The roof plate is off for now, and I won't glue it until the end of this build. Now more detailed parts, so coaxial machine gun, which will be plugged, roof details like periscope covers and crew compartment ventilator. These long fenders on which you can hang side skirts, fuel and water tank covers, and the headlight. According to reference photos, I made the headlight hollow and without front cover. Additionally, I've decided to add some welding on the engine bay cover, so all the lifting hooks and hinges received crisp little welds made from stretched screw macaroni like here. Here you can see 4 type of the gun mountlets. The first and the second one are late type, the third one is the, let's say, mid type, and the one without any screws is the very early type. I think I'm gonna use the third one with the bolts, so let's say early mid type, and 2-piece barrel. Oh, here is the gun bridge. Very simple assembly. Another welding, but this time more heavier one, so I've decided to add some additional welds on the front plate and the back plate, and on those spots where the heavy welding supposed to be, so the periscope covers and the fuel and water tank, and additional antenna. And using the hobby knife, I've rescribed some flame cutting marks on the edges of the plates. Now the thing that bothers me most, and I must admit I forgot to check it before the armor plates were installed. This is the the hanger for the additional track links, and there is a guiding hole in the side plate, so either I need to fill it, or maybe I'm gonna use these holders for the tracks, but I think without them the Jagdpanther looks, you know, more factorish, so to speak. I've kept the gun barrel removable, so I can, you know, choose maybe between one piece and two piece barrel. Here are some wheels with polycaps installed inside. I like those polycaps because you can easily attach and remove wheels during the process of the painting or simple assembling. Okay, we're getting close to the end of this build. I've got the engine cover and I kept it removable. I don't know where I'm gonna use it. I've installed the hinges for the back doors and they are removable, so definitely the back door. I don't know about the engine cover, so you know, this is the core of the factory look. Maybe I will add this mounted because without it too much interior is visible in the front and there isn't much detail inside. Here we are back to the planning idea of the diorama, so 3 Jagdpanthers on the assembly line. Here are some smaller and larger bricks I'm gonna use to cover those, you know, let's say imperfections in the sides of the Jagdpanthers. Some engine, maybe, you know, engine wheels will be stacked along. I've got plenty of separate wheels from the previous Panther build, so there is I've got more wheels that I really need, so maybe something like this, like you know, on those photos I showed you before. The last and the final idea is to replace those Jagdpanther halves with this lifting crane. This is field lifting crane, so it has wheels, it can be, you know, moved and towed, so it's not like factory thing, but I can remove those wheels and maybe this will be, you know, more convenient in the factory environment. And the idea is to hang the gun bridge and the barrel on the lifting hook like it was removed from the Jagdpanther in the factory, you know, for replacement or maybe for the final attachment of the gun. So something like I'm gonna show you for now. Here, one piece barrel. Maybe you know, or something like this. The gun bridge is almost out, but not entirely, or the gun bridge and the barrel are hanging on the lifting hooks. The rest will be the same, so wheels, additional parts, and so on. As always, at the end, here are some photos of this finished Jagdpanther. Let's say finished is a strange word here because, you know, it's like in the halfway of being finished, because, you know, this is, you know, basically it's funny because you are building the tank which was during the build, you know. So there will be red primer, there will be some very base Dunkelgelb coating, and nothing more. The main emphasis will be on the diorama itself, and not into the, you know, fancy camouflage or simmered pattern or even weathering, because this will be factory Jagdpanther, so there won't be any, you know, scratches, weathering effects, any mud, dust, etc. Well, maybe dust from the roof of the factory, but not as heavy as in the, you know, normal tank, which will be on the, you know, muddy Ostfront diorama or something like that. I hope you find this movie interesting or at least amusing, so feel free to leave subscription, comment, like, and we're gonna see each other on the next episode, on which I'm gonna show you, you know, I think it will be about building the diorama, not the Jagdpanther, and definitely we're gonna decide on the final look of the diorama. So have a nice day, have a nice Christmas, and see you on the next episode. Cheers!